Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Eastern Shore Talk, your podcast for all things self care and movies. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. We're glad to have you. This is episode 60. I'm Jay Watson.
And I'm Cathy Castle.
And Cathy and I have brought on a special guest, and I know we've talked before about, at least for me, one of my favorite parts of the podcast is doing what we call self care testimonials, where folks come on and kind of talk a little bit about their struggle, but more so talk about some of the self care that they use to kind of help navigate those difficulties. And today we are very fortunate to have Miss Rachael Belcher along with us to kind of talk about some things that she's done in the first responder segment. And Rachel, we're glad to have you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, guys. This is exciting. I'm excited to talk to you.
So, Rachel, we were referred to you by a friend of the podcast, Mr. Vance Rowe, who speaks very very highly of you and recommended we have you on. So, like Vance, you have a first responder background. So, kind of give us a little bit of background about your story and kind of how you've gotten from A to Z and kind of what you're working on now.
Sure. So in 2001, well, let me go back a little bit farther. When I turned 18, I got my EMT certification and volunteered as an EMT for several years. In 2001, at the age of 21, I got hired by Baltimore County as a 911 operator, and then also cross-trained as a police dispatcher. I spent 3 years in communications. And then in 2004, I joined the fire department, and I have been a paramedic for the fire department ever since. In that time, in 2004, after Hurricane Katrina, I spent about a month down in Biloxi, Mississippi, doing help post Hurricane Katrina with getting people the resources that they needed and getting their trailers set up. And when I started at dispatch, it was actually August of 2001, so a month before September 11th happened. I was still down in training, so that was interesting to kind of witness, and that really was my introduction into emergency services.
So tell us a little bit about kind of your background. I kind of discovered you through Vance, and you having been published in an article here not too long ago talking about some struggles you've had in the first responder world and kind of dealing with some things on that end.
Right. Yeah. So I would say at about year 15, to go back a little, my dad was a state trooper. And he told me at the beginning, be aware of the things that you encounter. That stuff will catch up with you. You really have to be cognizant and aware that eventually it'll catch up. And at the time, I'm a 21-year-old kid, footloose and fancy free. I did internalize it and, kept it in the back of my mind. But
you said you'll be fine, right? That's my 21.
You'll be fine.
Household says. It's fine.
Exactly. And, I really did feel like I was pretty, emotionally intelligent and healthy, and thought that it would be quite easy to kind of start to notice the warning signs if something were going on. And what's interesting with being a first responder is not only are you exposed chronically to trauma, violence, death, dying, you're oftentimes in life-threatening situations where your own life is in danger. You are responsible for making split-second, very important decisions concerning other people's lives and the care that you're giving them and so forth. You're chronically sleep-deprived. The schedule is just all out of whack. It's inconsistent. The shifts are long. We work 2 10-hour days and 2 14-hour nights. And my husband also works for the fire department, so we'll go full 48 hours without seeing each other at all. And then we're not sleeping in bed together for four nights out of every 8 days. So the combination of all of those things, and the fact that you really do have to, and this aspect of the job creeps up on you, you have to numb your emotions in order to do the job. You have to compartmentalize in order to complete your task. There's just no way around it. And we take our brains home with us. So it's not really possible to live that way at work and then come home and be emotionally available and open. And what I realized is that, yes, we do have to compartmentalize to do our job, but you do have to go back and revisit that and process those things, or else I call it like the suitcase. It just piles up to the point where it's overflowing. And typically in the first responder community, we're not asking for help until we are in crisis. And I think partially it's because we don't even recognize that we are headed that way, because we're so used to just numbing, we're numbing feelings of hunger because we can't eat. We're ignoring that we have to use the restroom because we just don't have an opportunity to do it. We're ignoring the fact that we're exhausted because we have to, we have another 10 hours to work. So I just think that our bodies become so numb that we just really don't even realize that there's a big problem until it's very, very obvious. So at about year 15, I realized that there was a problem.
And how old were you then, Rachel?
So in 2015, I was 35. And so my trigger call is suicides. And what happens is every time you have a certain kind of call, you're not just experiencing that call. You're experiencing that call, and then every other time you've experienced a similar call. Yeah. So you're being emotionally affected by that specific call, and then over the next couple days, you're then reliving all of the other kind of things that came up as a result of that. And it's really hard to, that's not something that you can choose to not participate in. It'll come up in your dreams. It'll come up when you're driving down the street and you're riding by a scene of, let's say, an accident that you were on or something. And especially if you live and work in the same area and you're driving by these places every day, every street is haunted in a sense. Yeah. So I wasn't able to express emotion or process emotion. I started to have trouble in my marriage because I didn't really feel like participating. And eventually I decided that I needed to do something about it. I had been going to therapy, but I realized now that I needed to have a culturally competent therapist who actually understood kind of the holistic experience of a first responder. So it was nice to talk about it. But there were times where, my first couple of therapists would end up crying in the office while I'm telling them, things that I needed to unpack. And I just didn't feel comfortable, in my eyes, I was harming them by telling them this stuff. So I made the decision to check myself into a 30-day inpatient mental health. It's not a hospital or anything. It's a facility that's specifically for first responders, and they treat substance abuse and like mental health, kind of like PTSD symptoms. And I'm really glad that I did that. And then probably after that point, it took me another 2 years of just consistently working on myself and kind of taking, holding myself accountable for the actions that I needed to take to be consistent and disciplined to just be more healthy than I was.
Well, I would think, Rachel, that these, Jay is correct. I feel very passionate. My organization, Channel Marker, feels very passionate. My husband actually works with first responders as a clinician. But I know that there's not a lot of those kind of programs for people to go into. So it sounds like you found one. I'm curious of which one it was, but it doesn't seem to me that there's a lot of places to go, like you said, to find. You use culturally competent. If somebody doesn't know what that means, it means people that understand what first responders are going through, which is, um, I don't even know at some point. It I probably always thought that I understood what first responders went through, but I didn't until I really started also working side by side with first responders and going through some trainings. But it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. And it's interesting because, they talk a lot about fight or flight, rest and relax, and how, uh, an average person will kind of be able to switch back and forth between those two things as needed. And, really essentially our bodies and our brains were built for sprints, not marathons. Like you're meant to be in that sympathetic fight or flight state as a sprint. And then when it's over, but I have found, and through talking to a lot of my colleagues and friends, that we really exist in the sympathetic, in the fight or flight, almost consistently to the point where that toggle switch that takes you back and forth is almost broken. So when you're bouncing back to a fight or flight leaning um, kind of like baseline. Uh, it's very difficult to fall asleep, relax. We our emotional regulation is just yucky, and there's a
Dumping
lot of
cortisol, just cortisol constantly, right?
exactly. Yep. There's a lot of substance use. There's a lot of you know, suicidal thoughts, and it's just it's really hard, especially when you feel like you're alone in how you're feeling. And until I started talking about it and telling my story, I can't even count the amount of people that say, "Oh my gosh, that's how I feel too." And I felt silly saying it. I didn't want to seem weak, or I didn't want to seem, you know, whatever. So just telling the truth is really powerful, and just giving other people permission to say what their experience is.
Now, Rachel, did you tell me because we spoke on the phone a while back about having you on? Did you not only in your 30-day inpatient, but did you step away from active duty or on limited duty for a while, even after that? Am I correct? Or
So I was there for 30 days, and a few years later, I hurt my shoulder. So I, and again, this is so interesting. Like, we'll hurt ourselves at work and won't even realize it. Um, so I hurt myself, didn't really even realize it. And then a few months later, uh, a door hit into my shoulder, and it basically ripped my bicep tendon. It ripped my labrum, it tore my shoulder apart. So I'm thinking that this is like a career ending injury. And I really was devastated about it. And hindsight, so it's been a little over a year, and next week I'm returning back to the field.
Oh, wow.
So it's been a really long recovery, but now I can look back and see that injury was actually a blessing, because it gave me an opportunity to remember what it feels like to be a human again, and to have a normal sleep schedule, and to have a normal eating schedule, and to feel like I have a concept of reality. And because the state that you get in by just being in chronic stress all the time, it's like being on, uh, that carnival ride where you stick to the wall and it's spinning in circles.
Yeah.
You just feel like you're on that all the time. And it's hard to even assess what reality is.
so I liked a minute ago, Rachel, what you said about um, that fight or flight and how it's typically a sprint, and how we
Yeah.
sometimes first responders have their switches either slow or broken. You described it as broken. And when you said that, my mind went to a question, and I wonder if the mindset of someone who chooses to be a first responder is is part of that. In other words, we the built-in empath in us that want to help and serve and heal those things. If that is kind of, and Cathy, you could probably speak to this because you're very much about brain chemistry and all that kind of stuff. I just wonder if someone's mindset who their passion is to serve in that way, if that is part of that switch being off in some way, that fight or flight that's supposed to be a sprint is now elongated. Does that make sense, Cathy? Did I
You
describe?
mean like the adrenaline junkie? Like
Well, yeah, but it just, I just wonder how some folks just have that empath in them. They just have that desire to.
well,
Um,
but I would say what you're talking about, Rachel, is I would say, but you could answer this because you've lived it. I would say that broken switch is not there immediately. I think that it's insult after insult after insult that starts to break that.
I agree. And so this discussion is so complex.
It is.
So there's something
the
called
brain,
like,
the brain is complex. Yeah.
yes, it is. So there's this concept of the warrior archetype. Okay. And these are the people that run toward the problems. They're the helpers. They are, all the things that you would think when, you have someone coming to rescue you. But on the flip side, they are self-sacrificing. They will take care of themselves last. There's the scale is balanced with positive and negative traits. And obviously these jobs are an integral and crucial part of our society. And like studies have shown that individuals who have suffered adverse childhood experiences are more apt to go into these helping careers, police, firefighter, things like that. So then you already have this built in, I was, this specific need of mine was neglected or abused when I was a child. So I'm going to make sure that I,
Yeah.
can help
You're,
that
you're
person.
you're being what you needed when you were a child. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, that actually, that, like you said, empath, but along with empath also comes, some codependence. So we absolutely sacrifice ourselves to the ends of the earth, to kind of like fulfill our duty to honor the oath that we took to serve and protect. And we feel like self-care is selfish, which, I think that everybody's starting to learn that that's not true anymore, but a lot of first responders have a hard time doing things for themselves because they're just not used to doing that.
I'm glad that we're talking more about first responders. I feel like since maybe, I don't know, since 9/11, maybe 9/11 was a point in history, and then COVID was certainly another point in history. But, I'm glad we're talking more about the pressures of first responders, that they're not robots. You're not just people that give it all, throw it all at me because I can handle it. I'm the toughest person on the planet, and we all can think about people that have said, "Oh, that doctor has a horrible bedside manner," or "that police officer is a jerk." People have had lots of things to say about lots of people because that's what people do, right? But I'm glad that we're starting to talk more about what it's like to see, accident after accident after accident, or be a doctor in an emergency room or a nurse in an emergency room, and you went to check on somebody in a bathroom that you just brought back from an overdose, and then they're violent towards you because they're using again in the bathroom, and then you're terrified. And or whatever. There's so many situations, but you have to, or somebody dies in your care and you have to go to the next emergency, and you just, it's not normal. And
Right.
how are we just talking about this is what gets me. Like, how in our time frame now are we just starting to talk about those things, because they've been happening forever. And
Yeah.
like you said, there is a lot of suicidal thought, or people have taken their lives, and it's just terrible, because we need to see this. We need to be there. We need to prop up our first responders.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting, like I personally have had a loaded gun pointed at my face. I've been attacked. I've been spit on. I've been bitten. I've been threatened with rape. I've been stalked. I mean, the list goes on and on. Um, or you go from, you know, this call is, you know, an infant that you had to revive, that wasn't breathing and didn't have a heartbeat that you had to revive. And then the next call is someone with an infected toenail. And you have to balance, this, um, dichotomy of I'm here for emergencies and you have an infected toenail. And of course, shouldn't be saying any of that. I mean, I would certainly hope that society knows what an emergency versus not an emergency is by this point. But
Not always.
that's a whole different conversation.
Well, and I don't know. I'm glad we're bringing some attention to first responders, because you're right. It's relationship problems. It's sleep. Sleep is, if you don't get it, you're in big trouble, right? We need sleep, proper nutrition, movement, whatever, and we're just expecting a lot out of our first responder community. So I'm glad that there's starting to be some therapists or just support systems in general. Maybe it's not therapy, because we also know our first responders, we don't want to lose our badges and our jobs,
Yeah.
and to reveal every one of our skeletons in the closet, right? But who can we trust to get that stuff out and deal with it? So
Right.
I'm glad there are people like you that are willing to say, look, this is what it looks like. Almost like a glass bottom boat, right? This is what it looks like under the sea. This is what's really there.
Right.
It's
And
sometimes.
it's incredibly difficult to like describe what it's like. It's like, for example, trying to explain to someone what being a mother is like when they're not a mother or a parent, right? Or trying to describe what losing a parent or a spouse is like to someone that, like, until you are in that position, you truly, can't grasp the depth of,
That's why it's such a
of,
brotherhood, right? Like,
hmm
brother and sisterhood. I mean, you guys are peer support to one another. What I'm
yes.
really curious, what has worked for you? Obviously, you said this treatment program was great, but not everybody's there. Not everybody's at that point. So, what? Actually, I have a two-part question. This is usually Jay that does the two-part questions, and then people have to ask what the first question was. But
I'm teaching you well, Cathy.
gosh, you're rubbing off on me. But I'm curious and we'll come back if we can't answer them both right now. But one is like, what are some of the things, and maybe you've already said it a little, that would tell somebody, you might want to start talking to somebody, even if it's another person at your job, another person that does the same thing, besides
What are the signs? Yeah.
what are the signs? And then I'm also curious of what's been some really good things that have helped you besides the inpatient.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. What
Yeah.
aside from those, what self care are you doing
Yeah.
aside from the therapy and the 30-day now? Yeah.
Right. So the first part, isolation is a big one. It's really any behavior that's different from their norm. And are they isolating? Are they calling out sick? Are they drinking more? Are they saying stuff that doesn't make sense or that's concerning? Are they doing like high risk behaviors like out driving their motorcycle 140 miles an hour and recording it and posting it like, like it's cool. And I think that those people are maybe doing these things to try to reach out without reaching out, like behaviors and things to kind of inspire someone else to ask them if they're okay. But, I've talked to countless of my counterparts, and some of them who, were suicidal or who have attempted suicide have said, it didn't matter what anybody asked me. I wasn't going to be honest about how I was feeling or what I was going to do or how much I was drinking or anything like that, because there is a stigma. I hate that word, but it's true, where it's like if you say you have a problem, because, we're all just normal, right? We're all just normal human beings that are regularly experiencing extremely abnormal things. And it's not if, it's when it's going to catch up with us if we're not. And there's really no mental health preparation. There's no risk assessments. There's no, hey, how do you manage your emotions? Or what are there's no training and information or education about the psychological aspect of the job. There's maybe like a resiliency training on how to breathe, which is good, but there's no preparation on truly, they say, well, you know what you signed up for. No, no, you do not know what you signed up for. Second part, the things that I do. So with it being said about that, I think that organizations need to be including education about more behavioral mental health support and tools, resources to manage and mitigate. So what's predictable is preventable. We can predict that we are going to be exposed to they say an average person is exposed to like 4 traumatic things in their lifetime. And we're like 400 to 600 in our career. And, for some people that's a very low estimate. But in addition to things being provided by the organization, there also needs to be individual responsibility.
We lost the voice part of it, the audio.
Yep, we lost.
Is it back?
Oh, you're back.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. There has to be individual.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. There has to be individual responsibility. Like we have to take charge of ourselves. We have to take the steps. Like it requires discipline. It requires hard work. It requires that, we do certain things, even if it's just a self-care routine. I'm going to make sure I drink enough water today because I know that when I'm dehydrated, I feel like crap. Or, I'm going to make sure that I try to eat a healthy meal, or I'm going to make sure I go out and walk for 45 minutes or a half an hour, try to do it every single day. I'm going to call my friend and see how they're doing. I'm like, just these little steps that seem benign are really the most impactful things in caring about ourselves, something that you wouldn't think that you have to say, but like you have to care about yourself. And then you have to take the steps that are necessary. Even the bare minimum steps are better than most of us do on a regular basis.
So am I correct, Rachel, in you are involved in, is it sound therapy?
So yes, I got certified as a vibroacoustic therapy practitioner. And what it utilizes is sound frequencies go through speaker system and it produces vibration and the frequency vibration. So have you ever heard of like sound healing with the bowls,
Mm-hmm.
crystal bowls? It's the same concept, in that, good vibes and bad vibes. You walk into a room, you're like, there's that. Well, like everything has a vibration. Our bodies, our cells, like it's not woo woo, it's science. So each of our organs has its own frequency and like it can be measured, and things that affect our frequency. Are you dehydrated? Are you watching like stressful news all the time? Do you have a strained relationship with your spouse? Do you live near an airport? Are you sitting behind a computer all day? Like these are things that affect our bodies and our minds. So like just going outside and taking a walk in nature or being around people that have a positive attitude, like those types of things, if you are deliberate about the kind of people, places, and things that you consume or that you're around, it can, we're sponges for other people. We can either, be with someone who can help regulate us, or we can be with someone who throws us way off kilter and puts us in a state of anxiety.
So it's interesting. We've had different folks who've experienced different, difficulties, stresses, and such in their lives, and it's so interesting how different people find different modalities of self care that kind of helps align them back into a better mindset, better, you know, physiological state, um, which is really cool. It's one of the many reasons why we're trying to have this expo and kind of show at least our community here. Look, these are all the things that are available. Not everybody's going to choose the same thing, but yeah, I'm the sound therapy and a couple others, acupuncture. We've had an acupuncturist on, and Cathy
Yeah.
didn't know anything about acupuncture, and Cathy hates needles, and she sold Cathy in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I haven't done
So,
it, but I was like, I'm interested.
Yeah. I love acupuncture. Like, and I think that's another really important thing for people to know is like, you don't like clinical therapists are wonderful and needed and necessary. But in addition, there are a lot of other modalities that are available. There's like neurofeedback. There's something called TMS. There's acupuncture. There's yoga.
You need
There,
the
like,
buffet.
there's
You need the buffet to choose from.
exactly.
Just
And
don't
I
have
think,
the steak.
uh, right. And the fact that like a lot of people, especially first responders, they don't know what's available to them.
Well,
Um,
you know what I think gets people tripped up, or I should say it gets me tripped up. I shouldn't say other people, but like even as much study as I do about mental health and self care and whatever, I still get into ruts where I'm like keyed up or overwhelmed, mostly overwhelmed, right? And I have to really dial myself back and think, okay, what do I need right now? What can I grab and do right now to just chill myself out? You know what I mean? Like, for example, I have two graduations and a wedding coming up. Two graduations the end of May, and for two of my boys, and one of my boys is getting married in June. And I'm like, I wake up at 3 in the morning, and I'm like, oh, like okay, I got to do this and this and this and this, and it's just I find my brain just looping in the middle of the night. It's just driving me nuts. But I'm like, okay, what do I need? And in the mornings, I'm trying to flip my routines again. And I'll get good about this for a while, then I'll fall off the wagon, but I'm trying to do this deep breathing. I like to use Headspace when I'm
hmm
good. When I'm not being good, I won't use it for a while. But then I'm like, let me do this deep breathing exercise. Let me look at their little morning focus thing. And then there's a morning stretch that I really like. And I'm like, if I can just get up and get myself centered, or if I can center myself at night before I go to bed. We had somebody on our podcast tell us about this evening brain dump, and sometimes I'm good about it, sometimes I'm not. But what can we write down And I was doing it on an iPad. What can we write down to close the tabs in the brain so we can try to
Yeah.
sleep? Because they're going to open back up and pop up again tomorrow. But how can we just put it to bed?
Out of
And
your
we
mind,
try,
Yes.
out of your mind and on the paper. Yeah.
but it's so
Yeah.
hard. When you said discipline, I think it's just such. You're right. It's self discipline for everybody because it's easy. Well, some people. Jay is a very good disciplined person. I want to be Jay when I grow up, but I'm not. I
With
lose
hair.
I lose my way all the time and have to regroup.
I am the same way. And, you know, I know I would feel great if I went to the gym every day, but instead I just make a donation to the gym every month with high intentions.
I know
But,
what you mean by that.
like, even
Gotta love
there, right. So, like, I found that at night, if I just do a couple stretches, like, so simple, it literally takes 5 minutes. Like, on YouTube, there's like a 10-minute stretch. It makes a pretty big difference. And like, my body doesn't hurt as bad. And I say, if I just do this every day,
it.
maybe I would feel a little bit better.
And it's little tweaks.
Um,
Like I found that if I put my AirPods in and listen to the stuff that I'm doing, that I feel better about it than when I just have the phone beside me, like playing for some reason.
yes. And I mean, it even goes to like, I find myself like scrolling reels, and I'm scrolling, and I do, and then I say, what am I getting from this? And of course, it's that dopamine,
Mindless, stupid humor.
Yeah.
right? And like, believe me, I love it. I mean, I'm definitely guilty of doing that, but I definitely find myself saying, I know this isn't good for my brain. Let me just put the phone down and do something else. But gosh, it's so easy to like default to that when like you're bored or you're upset or or you're overwhelmed. And it's like, right. And then you're like, let me just,
It's
let me
either
just
Reels
zone
or
out.
Amazon. What's going to be less harmful?
Right, exactly. And it's probably Reels because, we all know where the Amazon scrolling leads to.
Can I tell
And
you, Kathy, what I think my quote unquote secret is to being well. One of
So
them,
just
one is not a secret. It's I'm OCD. I'm just so that's not the secret.
that part's right.
But I think there's a deeper part.
That's well for you. It does well for you to be that.
Yes,
Means well for you.
it's efficient and productive in that regard.
Yeah.
But also, and look, it's my my discipline with self care is not now the gym, yes, but other things in self care that I do now, I have not always done, and I've not always paid attention. But for me, and I've talked about this a lot with that thing I call the progression of self, and the very first step, and you talked about it earlier, Rachel, is loving yourself. To me, if you love yourself enough, you'll
First.
find a way to be consistent.
hmm
And that's the hardest step because it's that childhood trauma that we're holding on to that is so heavy is the reason why we don't love ourselves enough to do self care and get to it's but once like Matt Reynolds talks about what's he talk about the teeter totter once it teeters over it's great but you just don't want the other side to get heavy again and tip you back the other way but so yes if you happen to have OCD tendencies like me yes you're more likely to be regimental with the schedule part, not the intention. There's a difference between doing it, scheduling it consistently, and then and being intentional with it consistently. They both matter. And for me, the scheduling is easy. That's like I don't even have to think about that. But to me, the intention part of me doing it consistently is new. I haven't always loved myself enough to care to work on Jay, but I had to work on Jay to care enough to do. So it's all, this, what's the word I'm looking for? It all works together. It's all kind of,
like connected.
yes. So you have to, it's chicken or egg. They both matter. Which one's important? Well, they both are, and they each are. Um, so yeah.
Sorry.
And then I also think that like it's important also to remember like to go to your doctor and have them check like your vitamin and mineral levels. Have them check your hormone levels, because like vitamin D deficiency, B6, B12, folate, magnesium, like all of those things play a crucial role
So
in.
you're not the first person to say that. So what? This is going to sound like a silly question, but what would somebody ask? So if you're because what if you go to the doctor, they're doing blood work, they're usually not checking those things, right?
Exactly. So you have to specifically request a vitamin and mineral panel and a hormone panel. So for first responders, a lot of the men have low T.
Mm-hmm.
And, the testosterone is produced when we sleep at night and we're not sleeping. And, in addition to the other things that happen in our bodies with chronic stress, but like a lot of men have low T and a lot of women have just wildly, disrupted hormones as well. So
Well,
vitamin, mineral panel.
I think that's a good advice. That's good advice, because I think if we don't be specific like that and tell people, ask for the vitamin and mineral panel, that's what you said, right? And the hormone panel, that somebody's going to go to the doctor and say, I just need my blood work done. And then they're going to check the regular things that they would check in blood work, which is not those things.
Correct. Yeah. And then, once you can take a look, so the first time I had my vitamin D checked, like, I don't even think I had any. And I was like, well, no wonder I feel terrible. And another thing, like in the morning when you wake up, so we all have heard about like dopamine and serotonin. So serotonin is like the happy thing, but when your serotonin is low, you have a tendency to like feel disrespected more easily. You're more apt to be complaining. And if you have like, let's say, an argument with someone and, you're feeling like that, like, I don't know, that like rejected feeling, or that like, I'm not worth it feeling, like that makes that chemical go even lower. So, they have this thing, I'm sure you guys have heard of like seasonal depression in the winter when people like feel terrible. Well, I hate to make an Amazon recommendation after what we just talked about, but they have something on there. It's called like you can just look up a SAD light, which is seasonal affective disorder. And then in the morning, when you're getting ready for work or when you're doing your morning routine, you can just turn that on yourself. And supposedly, I'm not a scientist, but supposedly this really gives you a nice serotonin boost to start your day with.
Yeah, that's definitely good advice as well.
Now, Rachel, was it you I was talking to? Spoken to so many people here in the past few months about different things. It might not have been you, but someone was talking about they were trying to help with legislation for mental health services for first responders. Was that you?
I may have mentioned that, but so I'm trying to advocate for that just within our department.
Okay.
And what would that look like? What are you?
So currently we have minimal. We have access to EAP, which is the Employee Assistance Program, and that program is just simply ill-equipped to serve first responders in the way that it's needed.
Because isn't it, not to knock EAPs, but isn't it more like, I know ours anyway, is maybe it's just like 4 sessions for a problem. It's not, maybe it's a way to dip your toe in to the pool. Right. But
so I think for our program, we get 10 free sessions, but there are only certain clinicians who accept EAP. And from my research, very few of the ones who are culturally competent or even have like minimum basic knowledge. And like for chronic stress, there are certain modalities that are, proven by science to be the best, like cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, like things like that. And, these clinicians just aren't trained. They're trained in just kind of like traditional talk therapy.
Right.
So certainly not knocking EAP. It's a great resource. It's a great service. I'm glad we have it. Unfortunately, it also has the tendency to, let's say someone finally takes the step and they're like, I'm either in crisis or close to crisis. I need help. They call EAP. They get with a clinician because they're not informed on, the questions to ask or what to do. Then they have a bad experience like I did, where the clinician ended up crying in a session, or they will do 10 sessions and then come out the other side and say, well, I'm no better. I did what I was supposed to do. I'm just broken. This is just the way I'm always going to be. So it's really, really important that when somebody finally does ask for help, that they are getting into the correct treatment for them so that they have the highest likelihood of recovery. We have a peer support team. It is not funded at all by our department. It is on a strictly volunteer basis, which, I'm glad that it's there and there are people, but like going to conferences to get the most updated information, trainings, things like that, that all comes out of their individual pockets to do that. And so we're trying to get a staff clinician to at least kind of guide, to be a resource for the peer support team and some other initiatives that we want to do, like some education, some training, starting to educate on what post-traumatic growth is instead of just constantly talking about PTSD and how broken we all are. Like,
that's great stuff. That Struggle Wells training, the
yes,
post-traumatic growth stuff is such good stuff. I often
such
thought
good
that I was
stuff.
like, if departments could have a clinician or a counselor of some sort on staff, wouldn't that be well
Cathy,
spent money?
this is going to be a silly question, but doesn't or didn't like, for example, the Easton Fire Department, haven't they always had like a medical doctor like that was in the department that was kind of that oversaw the medical doctor side of things? I just seem to remember that in the past. I don't know if it still exists or not.
I mean, I know with our local police departments, there's pre-employment evaluations, and if somebody's having a hard time, but I am glad they have started the mental health check-ins, and I guess by law it's every 2 years. So Marty does those check-ins, Jay, for a few police departments, and
Yeah.
some are choosing to do it yearly, which still probably isn't enough, but and then Marty has used some of the stuff from the state police to make there's some assessments from the state police, but he's also made his own. He'll take an hour with each of the officers and really talk about what are we doing about sleep, what are we doing about movement, what are we doing about eating, how are relationships, a lot of those topics that you've talked about, and then offer, if they need to come back and talk to him, they could. He's not diagnosing anybody. He's not saying they need X, Y, and Z necessarily, just talking through some self-care points.
That's incredible. Yeah, and I know that I honestly believe that that's been mandated for the police, and that has yet to carry forward into the fire department. And Jay, like for our fire department, we have a medical director that kind of oversees the clinical care of our patients, but we don't have a doctor that oversees us at all. We have right. We have
that'd be interesting, wouldn't it, to use?
But it's funny how, but don't most fire departments and maybe some police agencies have like a chaplain?
So our police department has several chaplains, and we kind of share those resources.
So what I'm getting at is, and don't get me wrong, that's an important position. I advocate for that as well. But to me, it's just another in the list of needs. If you need a chaplain and you need a medical doctor, that's in some cases, then why isn't there a mental health clinician or someone, a resource of some kind? It might be for a county or however they could do. I mean, there's and I'm sure money is at the root of all of
Yeah,
this. But
it is.
Yes, it is. Yes,
um,
it is.
Because they have to
And
do it out of their already budgets they already have. There's not
yeah,
like extra money for them, which is
yeah,
hard, right?
yep. And then, I say like in the fire department, so there's something that this term operational readiness, right? So it means like you're trained up. So for police, it would be firearms training. It would be going to the range. It would be, learning self-defense tactics and all of these things. For the fire department, it's, uh, you know, learning about different types of structures, learning about how different materials burn, how to throw different kinds of ladders. And they have used research to kind of like look at the physical occupational risks that we encounter, like cancer. We're exposed to all these toxins, and they've taken several steps to kind of mitigate some of those risks. Like we have this device in our engine bay where it hooks up to the exhaust system, so we're not breathing in exhaust. So all of the research showing that we're exposed to all of these occupational hazards that cause cancer, they have taken steps to kind of mitigate those risks. However, when it comes to like the psychological injury we endure, that has, I don't want to say it's been ignored, but it's been not prioritized.
yeah. Just like mental health in general, just seems to. Although it's
You can't see it, so
yeah.
it's like you
And
said,
there's
it's
that
complicated, and people don't want
there's
to
that
always say,
stigma thing. There's that stigma thing again too. Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Well, Rachel, we are certainly glad you've taken some time out to join us. But before we get out of here, let's go a little later on our conversation. Talk about some things we've been watching, TV, movies, and streaming. So, anything you've watched lately that you've enjoyed?
So the two things that my husband and I have been watching lately are not new because we have two little boys and we're almost always watching Disney Channel. But
Nice.
so we
I
finally got around. I know they're so cute.
Mine are not watching the Disney Channel.
But we finally got around to watching White Lotus.
Yeah.
That's like a series that's pretty. Apparently, it's old and
I haven't seen it.
it's old news. And then we just finished watching Only Murders in the Building.
Oh, that's great! I love it.
We are big fans. Love that show.
That was a really good show.
Now, have you finished watching all 4 seasons?
Oh, I think that tonight will be the last episode of the 3rd season.
Yeah. So you've got one more season to watch, and season 5 is about to come out in the next month or two.
Perfect timing.
Do you have a favorite character so far?
Oh my goodness. I feel like I love, gosh, what the heck is her, the girl, the bloody,
Selena Gomez?
Bloody Mabel. Yeah, that's it. Yes.
Mabel Moore.
All simply because of the way that she interacts with the Martins, Steve and yeah. And just Steve, we just got finished watching the one, the triplets did it.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And I've been singing that song in my head for the last couple days because it's so catchy.
There's just something about that show. It's just like
I miss it.
It's to watch the relationship between the two old guys and Selena Gomez. Like at first, she was like didn't want anything to do with them, and then they kind of grew on each other. Now they're just like they're this odd couple or trio that just it fits, and they all like even Martin Short, who's the oddball. He's just an oddball character.
He's my favorite one.
Yeah, he's cool.
They each kind of play a role within the core of the 3-way relationship of all of them, and it's I always find myself like trying to figure out who did it, like who. And I'm thinking Where's the security in this building that there's a murder in this building every year? At least one. Like,
What is
where's
the
the
cameras?
security?
How are they getting
I
people
know.
cameras?
Yeah. The no technology. I like it because like I feel like normally shows today, especially like murder mystery, they're so predictable and you're like, well, obviously, and you can kind of predict it in advance. With this one, like you really do get surprised.
And each season, obviously, there's a different murder, but we find out a little bit more about, like, this past season, we didn't know that Steve Martin's character had a sister, Melissa McCarthy.
Mm.
It's just that we didn't know that. And she just happened to pop up all of a sudden. You haven't gotten that far yet?
No, I'm excited about that one because I love Melissa McCarthy.
So she pops on, and we're like, we didn't even know he had a sister.
Yeah.
Well, what are your recommendations? Because we're going to need something else to watch when we're done.
Go ahead and say it.
Ted Lasso.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We love
Watch Ted Lasso.
Best show ever, ever,
I-
ever.
I watched the series twice because I missed it so much.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
so
about to do it a third time.
You have seen Ted Lasso.
Yes, love it.
Was
And
okay. You did Stranger Things. Did you do Stranger Things?
did not finish Stranger Things. How about Shrinking? Did you see Shrinking?
I've not. I started to and haven't finished it.
Watch that. I haven't.
That's really good.
Did you do Outer Banks?
Yes, we did Outer Banks. Oh gosh, let me think.
Jay?
How about Mrs. This is really old. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
I have not seen that.
That's good. That's good.
I do a lot of documentaries.
I love documentaries.
Yeah. I'm watching one now called Ransom Canyon. It's brand new on Netflix. I think I've watched the first 3 episodes. This is the first season. It's Josh Duhamel and Minka Kelly. And
wait, is that? Hold on. I think that you know what, Jay? I think I saw a preview to that. It's like they're doing this country line dance.
Yep.
And it's good.
Hold on.
In the preview, it's a country line dance.
Maybe. Or you might have seen the previews to the Assassin too, because there's a country lines dance in that too.
No, it was with that Josh Duhamel.
Yes, it's like a modern western.
Is it good?
I've liked it so far.
Yeah,
surprisingly, it's good.
There's one on Nat Geo, and of course I'm on my phone, so I can't remember the exact name, but it's about a guy that does those like super steep climbs. It's like a mountain that doesn't even look like there's anything to grab onto, and he climbs straight up it. I want to say it's called like Edge, or I don't know what it's called, but it should be easy to find, and it is really good if you like that kind of.
That would make me nervous.
Yeah, it will make you nervous.
They're gonna fall.
So yeah, Rachel, I go to the movies every Friday night. That's part of my self-care, and I went and saw the Accountant 2.
Okay.
Past Friday night, and it was way better than the first one. Ben Affleck, obviously, is the main character. So I'd forgotten so much about the first one because it was just kind of so, but it was really good. It was lighter. It just more kind of characters were just fleshed out. There's certainly action and that kind of stuff because that's just kind of how it is. But it was really good. I was very, very pleasantly surprised.
I'll have to check that out. So what is your favorite movie of all time?
Oh boy.
I'll give you 2 that are like they're completely they're way different from each other. I could watch Avengers Endgame 100 million times, but also A Few Good Men.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah, to see Jack Nicholson's character like get his in the end, and see Tom Cruise kind of figure himself out. Yeah, those 2. Look, there's a lot of movies. The Wizard of Oz, believe it or not, is still high, and Cathy's gonna not agree with that one for sure. But The Wizard of Oz, of all things, is way, way up there.
What about you, Kath?
I don't know. I'm hard because there's the classic 80s movies that they'll always be there for
She's
me.
a Star Wars person too.
I do like my rom-coms, but
Oh,
yeah, but then I'm like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Marvel. I mean, you have boys too. When you have boys, you're starting to you like the boy thing. So like, give
yes.
me a good Han Solo and Iron Man, and I'm good. I love it. I'm not
Yeah.
much less I love Disney, but much less the princess girl.
Well, Marvel is Disney, really. So
Yeah.
And I never saw myself as an action movie, but my boys love the
So
Marvel
you
stuff
can't help
too,
it,
and they're
right? And you're
good
sucking it in.
movies.
yeah,
Yeah.
this Friday I'm going to see Thunderbolts, which is the
Yeah,
new.
Ooh.
Yeah, so
we both are.
I'm going Friday. Kathy's going Saturday. Um,
What about you? What is your favorites? You're probably stuck into a
So
lot of kid movies lately.
yeah, I have so my two favorite movies are Stranger Than Fiction, which is a it's a Will Ferrell movie, but it's not a comedy. Well, it is funny, but it's like a dramedy, I guess.
Mm.
Just because it just emphasizes kind of you get one life
Mm.
and don't waste it. And then I really love Big Fish. Have you ever seen that one?
Either of them.
That's a that's a really good one too. Uh, I mean, I have a lot of movies, but those two hold a nostalgic, meaningful place in my heart. So I really like those.
no, Rachel, how old are your
Yeah, they do.
sons?
So my oldest is 10 and my youngest is 8.
Oh, that's such great ages.
Yeah.
So I go watch all the animated stuff. I watch it all. And I told Kathy when this
Except for
came out,
Paddington. You
I
bucked me
didn't
on
see
Paddington.
Paddington, but there's a
You need to
couple.
revise
The
yourself.
whole both the Inside Out movies are fantastic. The newest one
hmm
when they introduced anxiety as the new emotion, so good. And the Wild Robot it blew me away.
That was every time I see one of these, because we love to take the boys to the movies. We go, anytime something new comes out, and I think I don't know. It was I don't remember how long ago it was because I don't have a concept of time anymore. But it was like the Dog Man movie,
Oh yeah.
Yep.
and I was like, okay, of course I'm gonna take you, but I'm expecting not to enjoy it. It was so cute. It was actually a really good, funny movie.
Yeah. Wild Robot. I told Kathy, I said, Kathy, I'm telling you, this is going to be kind of one of those ones that we kind of always, when there's animated movies, no matter how old you are, you're going to remember. It's just, it's, it's, it sneaks up on you as an adult because I'm
Mhm.
like, wow, it makes you think. You know,
Yes.
I'm 57 years old. I'm like, huh. They just present this like, we all should come together to better everyone, because all the different creatures in the forest, and then there's this robot who they're deathly afraid of because he's a robot, and the animals don't have never seen a robot before, so they're all talking to each other, saying they call him the beast or the monster or whatever, and all of a sudden the monster the robot grows on them, and they all have to come together to help each other to survive, and it's just I was like, wow, it's got there's the animation and the kid stuff, but there's a adult theme in there somewhere too.
Now I'm gonna have to watch that
It's
again
so
because
good.
I saw it, but I'm sure I was distracted.
What's the
Sorry.
thing on the Disney Channel now for the boys? We used to love all the shows, even the Nickelodeon shows too, like Drake and Josh and iCar.
Funnily enough, my
Is there
my
just
10-year-old watches those exact shows.
I mean,
And then
we love
there's
them. We love them. We're just like, man, I'm sad that they're out of those phases.
I know he loves them, and iCarly, and there's another one.
Oh, Good Luck Charlie. Remember that? Did you watch that?
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Where they
There's one with a girl that has cancer, and then she had a shaved head. She recovered and everything, thankfully, but the show was kind of about that.
Hmm.
But I kind of tune those out because he tends to watch like he'll watch a season like 6 or 7 times, and it's like I'm gonna go.
The repetition. I remember. I guess it's not this way now, right? We had vans that had DVD players in them. I don't know what people do now with kids in cars, but I'm like,
iPad.
how many times are we going to watch Shrek? I remember taking a trip to
Uh-huh.
Florida and had to watch it like 5 times. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Ooh. Now it's
Yep.
headphones and yeah, it's probably easier now on the drivers with headphones and iPads.
Headphones, and then they can like download a movie before, like on the Wi-Fi, and they have a couple movies like in the queue. So
We were
until the iPad
the whole
dies.
vehicle.
Yes. My very first car had like the drop
Mhm.
down DVD player,
In the
and
middle
they both had to agree on the same movie, which,
never worked. Yeah,
uh-huh.
it's funny. The
It is fun though.
struggles are real.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel, again, thank you so much for joining us. And thanks, everyone, for listening. And we will catch you next time on Eat Your Short Talk. Take care, guys.
Thank you. Bye.